Jonathan Pettemerides, managing partner of a business called KYPROCK. We leverage probably the world's most advanced omni-channel operating experience into investments. But it's not about me, it's about the guys here, an amazing panel. Maybe we can just introduce ourselves from the end, just briefly. Tsachi, do you want to introduce yourself?
Tsachi Maimon, used to be the CEO of Aspire Global and the president of NeoGames today.
Perfect.
Jamie Shea. I've been in the industry for about 30 years now. Started with the Las Vegas markets, and as recently was heading up the DraftKings Sportsbook for 4 years before this, and now I'm with Strive Gaming. Very excited to be there.
Very good.
Marcel, Elfersy. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Gaming Innovation Group, otherwise known as a nice gig. And I haven't been there very long, but I'm a bit of a veteran in the industry as well, even though I know I don't look it. So.
All right, so I'm Erik Nyman, president of EveryMatrix, and I've been in the industry for 13 years and launched 2 businesses in the US. So this is my second time. I used to be with NetEnt for many years. And our US business is set up down in Miami. I used to be in New York, but it's nicer down there.
Ooh, tough. I'm sure you should have said that, but we'll go with it. We've got a really stellar panel, clearly some of the best leadership in B2B iGaming anywhere in the world, so well done to the conference for putting this panel together. We've been tasked with talking a little bit about the sort of proprietary versus third-party technology platforms, and it's a hot topic at the moment. Came up in conversation yesterday during Adam Greenblatt's presentation with CNBC late at the end of yesterday. So if I just refer back to the actual question we've been asked to answer, as iGaming comes to the forefront, vertical integration remains a focus, but has it shifted from back-end tech to game content? So as we get into that, Jamie, maybe can you just start by defining what vertical integration actually means? And
Sure.
We'll go from there.
Yeah, so it's basically, building your tech stack end-to-end, having it in-house, everything built from your own teams. And the question is, do you want to buy or do you want to build? And I think that's what we're here to answer today, is saying that, the technology as it is right now, I think when we were first starting out in 2018, really pushing everything out there, the push was, let's build it, let's make everything our own it end to end. And then, we started to see that really to get to the revenues that we want to get the opportunities that we want out there, we need to make sure that we're giving the customers what they want to see. And one of the best ways to do that is to look out there and we can see it at this conference alone, is all the innovation that's out there that you can build on, you can bring in-house to integrate with, have a PAM that can integrate with all of these different companies, and it gives you that ability to have massive amounts of content.
Okay, that's a good start. Have we got any examples we're in North America. Are there any North American examples of where vertical integration's worked, in anybody's opinion?
So I think certainly since PASPA, there's not really been a build agenda. It's been, I think you swap build with maybe acquire.
Yeah.
Maybe in the early days or in other markets, we still see companies, particularly on the B2B side, who are building their own tech. But I think if we look at the operator community in the US, probably not since maybe RSI did it at the start of iGaming in New Jersey, nobody's really built their own tech as an operator, and correct me if I'm wrong. But certainly there's examples that have chosen to acquire rather than hire, let's say.
Yeah, I think that's right.
But yeah, I think probably most are still leasing it in. Certainly most of the areas of most of the levels of the vertical integration. But we have seen some examples of, I guess DraftKings is a good example of trying to acquire as much as possible, and even perhaps more than operators have done it elsewhere.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Tsachi, I guess let's weigh up the advantages. If I'm an operator, I think it's quite cyclical personally, but if I'm an operator, do I insource or work with one of you guys on this panel to provide my tech stack?
So of course that there are some benefits of owning your own tech. There are two main, but there are more. One is that you can add value to your corporate if you are a public company or you have any exit strategy. So this is one thing that can add value. The second is the understanding that you can control your roadmap.
Yeah.
But those two are nice to have, important to have, but it's not easy to maintain. And it's something that if you are focusing on that, in order to learn the future, you need to go to the past. Let's go to Europe. In Europe, there are some big operators with their own tech. But they're not going to any jurisdiction with their tech only. They're using also third-party PAM. It's obvious.
Correct.
So if in the history of 20, 30 years, it didn't happen where everybody owned their tech, and also the big ones are using others. So now let's go back to North America. It's true, the big ones have their own tech or want to have their own PAM, but now it's only few states that are, some of them having the same mechanism. There are a lot in common from those states. But throw yourself 10, 15 years from now. Each state regulator will want to have its own attention. He will have a lot of political forces to do a lot of adjustments. And now let's see the operator with its own tech dealing with 50 different states with the same tech. He will stop being an operator and will start being a technological. The CEO and the management will start focusing on what to do tomorrow and not how to market tomorrow. So even if it seems like the trend is going there, it's not for long. It will go back like any other jurisdiction, 25%, give or take, of the market, 25, 30% of the market will be by companies that don't have their own tech.
So I think it's about scale, it's about timelines. So if you're
and good feeling, by the way. I feel good. I have my own tech. It's good for the feeling.
But in my opinion, there's a lot of underestimation on what it takes to bring that technology in-house. I can think of a European operator made an acquisition to have a proprietary tech platform, probably spending 10 million a year for the last few years on modernizing that platform. Huge inflated tech teams, when surely, if you draw parallels to the retail casino space here in North America, it's all about the customer. And everybody should be focused on customer experience. Mm-hmm. So if you're advising a new entrant into the online gaming world, what would your advice be, Erik?
Yeah, no, I think, the historical context here is interesting. We've seen changes in Europe, quite recently with my company that I work for, where Bet@Home, a big operator in Austria and Germany, outsource a large part of their tech to us. I think what I would like to add is it's focus, right?
Yeah.
So as any industry player here, long-term success will be determined by what you are focusing on and what you do best. And building large tech organizations is very costly. It also the sort of the both B2B and B2C focus will absorb a lot of time for management and middle management, other people to figure out what to do. So I think it's tough, and in a maturing industry, you will go back to outsourcing at least part of your technology as an operator.
Do you think if we put tech to one side for a little bit and focus on product, there's a trend now where operators are in-housing slot content to have a differentiated product. Are you seeing that as a trend, and where do you expect that to go? Do you think that's going to encroach on live dealer or other products? What do you guys think, Marcel?
Yeah, I don't think it's a new trend. So we've seen, if we go back to the more established markets in Europe, we've seen a lot of big operators have, I spent many years at 888, and since day one, 888 had proprietary gaming content. They had an in-house studio, and I think even today, if you look at top 10 performing games, a few of them will be their in-house games. Others did it as well. William Hill. I think Bet365, some of the big operators, they've been doing it for years. I think it's a new theme now in the US. We're hearing it a lot this week as well. People are talking to us about how we facilitate exclusive content if they're going to partner up with us. So it's an important theme, and I think it can be a differentiator. Obviously, that's an area that can make sense economically as well, because if you get a good performing game, which you don't have to invest like building a PAM. If you manage to hit the nail on the head with a game, then it can be very economically viable as well, as opposed to building a whole PAM and sportsbook. So I think it's a theme that we're going to continue seeing, and I wouldn't stop at game content. I think there are parts of the let's call it the value chain that can give you that differentiation, that don't require the massive investment. And those are maybe the parts that operators should focus on being exclusive. It might be on personalization, if it's not game content, or something they're doing within the whole kind of customer journey. And those are areas that probably can be achieved relatively more simply. So yeah, I think we'll continue to see that.
And it's important that I think it's a good trend to have their own games. It's important, and they need to have a little bit of a cost saving. They need to promote the games to their players, their own games, to spend a little bit less. Profit is a strong phrase right now. But the question is how you're going to do it. If you're going to do it as building your own studio, and again, it's going back to what we said before, that you might defocus yourself from the business, because if this is your target, it's fine. Someone else can do it. Someone that this is bread and butter can do it for you. And then it comes to commercial. You can have your own games. You can cost save your expenses on content, but you don't need to do it yourself, because then you need to deal with it in the day-to-day. So you can just frame it to the supplier, and he will do it. And probably it will cost him less than doing it himself.
Yeah, so you guys are the enablers for the operators to define their proposition, and that's probably an area. If you had $1 and you're an operator,
Exactly.
would you spend it on developing the customer proposition, or would you spend it on tech?
Because a lot of companies don't cost their attention, and their attention is is more important than the spend.
Yeah.
And this is something that usually the ego doesn't let you decide differently.
When you
Jamie?
start pulling into all, grabbing different areas, and you become, the master of none, because you're just spreading yourself so thin with your tech, and this is cool, let's get this out there. I love the idea of people creating their own games. I love the game content that's happening, because it's innovative, it's speaking to the demographic that's out there now. The operators have so much data on their customers, so they know what their customer likes. They see as soon as they put something live that this was a hit, let's do more like that. But I think at the same time, you have to be conscious of that tech debt. You have to, that has to be in the back of your mind. Are we focusing energy on a place that maybe isn't our specialty?
Yep.
It isn't the place that we know best. Let's outsource that. Let's bring that out there. Let's take the data, the information that we have people, build the games for us. And I'll keep referring back to just this conference alone. You're seeing so many innovative products out there, and bringing those in, and you have people who are, in the younger demographic saying, this is how we want to see this. This isn't the same as, 30 years ago. So I love the idea of, going with people who actually, this is all they do. This is their specialty, and getting the best service, getting the best technology, and not sacrificing your in-house development team.
I think it's often driven, if you look at Europe, where some of the major suppliers are supplying so many operators, it comes back as an operator pain point, is I can't get prioritization for what I need. So how do you guys resolve that? It's probably not an issue at the moment in North America, but that's something that you guys are going to have to deal with. Marcel, any thoughts?
So we've looked at that, and here I'll talk a little bit without wishing to market ourselves too much, but I think one of the solutions around that is for the next generation of platform to be built and architected in a way that enables the operators still to differentiate. So, if you know what the pain points are and the trends and, the key kind of growth areas for the operators, and then, I think it's up to us as platform providers to provide a solution that avoids that issue of prioritization and bottleneck amongst our partners. So if we're, now the modern day architecture is such that you can, for example, build a lot of functionality into the front end, which, you don't need to wait for your platform provider to sort out their priority if you're just a small or medium fish in their fairly big pond. So that's certainly one of the areas you should be looking at when choosing a modern day platform provider today.
Let's not forget that the priority issue will still be there if it will be your own tech, because then this department will want that and that department will want that. So the priority is not something that you have a challenge with only when it's a third-party PAM. Now, there are a lot of commercial ways to solve it if it's a third party, because again, if you know what you want, the way there can be differently commercialized. You can have your own tech developers within the supplier's team. You don't need to manage them. Just tell them what to do, and they will do what you want. Maybe it costs a little bit more than only having a revenue share. Fine. But you wanted to control your roadmap. Control your roadmap. There is a way without buying the whole company, the whole stack, and now let's deal with it. So there are a lot of ways to do it, and the priority is not an issue just with your suppliers. It's internally even more challenging.
Yeah, I keep sort of coming back to that retail digital parallel. And if you think of the casinos in retail, they've got third-party casino management systems. They've got third-party slot content. And this is just an alternative channel. It's an additional customer touch point. And the parallels are there, right? You don't have to come in, buy the world, and think that you have to own everything. So the personalization aspect that Marcel touched on, I think is absolutely critical. And if you're an operator, that's where you should potentially be spending your dollars at defining your proposition. So if we look at other world markets, are there any lessons or advice that we can take from those territories?
I think going back again to Europe, so let's say that something works for an operator that you have. You have your game studio that develop fantastic game content. I mean, eventually you will spin that off, and so you can sell to other operators, and that's how you get the economies going. But I think it's all. I mean, the last 3 years in the US has been pretty chaotic, and the reason why we are where we are is because it's been all this going into new states, and I think suppliers have not necessarily fully understood their agenda, which states they're going to go into, and really support the operators. So I think that has been a challenge.
I think a good point on that is that, every time you go into a new state, you have new regulations. So tech has to be able to keep up to, Ohio has decided we're going to do this, Massachusetts has decided we're going to do this. But not only that, you have a totally different demographic. So you have people who, you know, are all in on college football. You have another state where it's more the professional leagues. There's so much that changes from state to state. And then I also think the opportunity we have in the United States right now is that we're going live in different states and we can say, okay, this didn't go so well over here. Maybe we get a do-over. You know, each state is kind of like a do-over. You get a second chance to try and say, well, maybe this is what's going to work. This is the thing that's going to resonate with our players. And I think that's a really unique opportunity that we have right now because we are so young. We are in the infancy of this. We get to try and sometimes fail, but really have a lot of successes. And then as a whole industry, you know, it just pumps the whole industry up.
That's good, Tsachi.
I think that there are two things that I would mention that we can bring from outside of North America to North America. One of them is the cooperation between the operator to the supplier. In Europe, it's a long, you know, lasting relationship, more than 10, 20 years. So there is less tension. The operator can share his vision, what he wants to do next year, next 2 years. And here we still see it as every operator still keeps all the cards to himself and still expect the supplier to deliver. So this is one thing, to be a little bit more open and to see the supplier as a real partner. This is one thing. And the second, the ability of those operators here in the US to try and bring not only the attention to the players, but also to think about a long-term, you know, sustainable business with the players. Right now, we see that they are buying with a lot of marketing spent to just inject players inside. And it needs to take the time to bring the players a little bit slower, even if you are not jumping in revenues 100% year over year. But think about 10 years from now, not about next year.
Completely agree. We've got 5 minutes, so let's just think ahead a little bit. How do we see this sort of supplier-operator landscape shaking out over the next few years? I'll give you a slightly blunt assessment. There's people here representing companies who haven't got a cat in hell's chance of getting licensed in the US, and it surprises me that they're here. I expect the market to be supplied by fewer rather than many, but open the floor. What do you guys think, Marcel? Maybe I'll start with you.
I think it's hard to say what the future holds, but I think, you know, the whole operator-supplier relationship, it goes in cycles, right? And I think at the end, I think it's clear that in order to justify owning your own tech stack or elements, let's say the big elements of your tech stack, because I think there's a lot of elements in the tech stack, right? But let's say the PAM, sportsbook, whatever, you need economies of scale, right? So we've seen that in Europe. There's been, you know, one-track ponies in various markets that have tried to build their own tech or acquire their own tech, and they failed because of that massive overhead that they didn't appreciate. You know, if you're not going into multiple markets and your tech enables you to do that, then it's probably not going to work. I think, you know, in the US we have a unique situation of multiple jurisdictions within one country, as Jamie touched on, and I think probably the answer is a combination. You know, it goes in cycles. I think pretty much all of the major operators outside the US have elements or have markets where they're relying on third party for the same areas of tech that in other markets they're using their own proprietary tech.
Yeah.
I think it's important to remember as an operator that, you know, I'll give you a catchphrase. If you build or acquire it, you can't switch it, okay? Or if you do switch it, it's going to be really painful,
Yeah.
okay? If you're leasing it in, then, you know, you can switch suppliers, and that's something you can't do when you own it.
It's an underestimated process, platform migrations, my God. Jamie, any thoughts?
You know, I think I think we just need to be looking to keep everything innovative, keep making the market grow, attracting the right players that we want. I know we only have a couple minutes, but one of the things that I think with the tech stack and with everything that we do, what we can learn from the other markets, from the outside of the U.S. markets, is what's happened with responsible gaming, and how do we make sure that we are bringing that into everything that we do, all of our technology, making sure that we have the self-exclusions, we have the deposit limits, all of those things. I think that's probably, for me, one of the biggest things that we can take from the more mature markets, to say, we want to self-regulate this. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we can. And so any technology that we take on, anything that you build, it has to have a lens for that.
Fantastic. Tsachi, any thoughts?
I see a lot of opportunities with the newcomers.
Yeah.
They will come, they will do it differently, they will be more efficient, they will acquire players in a better price. They are much faster than those huge organizations. Think about, from the CEO to decide in which CPA to buy the next player. It's a long way, different message. So I think that there is a lot of room for those newcomers to grab more market share.
Excellent. Erik, final word?
Yeah, I think so. It's hard to predict the future, and I think we will be surprised at whatever happens. But look at the operator's specific needs. I mean, you need to. Operators are different. They have certain things they are very good at, and the next one can be good at something else. But I think we have 6, 7 large operators in the US today. There will be for sure more, and they will come into the market and possibly, acquire more or outsource more of the tech. And it's up to us to deliver on their growth agenda.
To meet their needs, right?
Yes.
Very good. Please join me in thanking the panelists, and thanks for your time, guys.